Joining us now, Rhode Island Senator Jack Reed, the ranking member on the Armed Services Committee. Senator Reed, the fact that the White House appears to not have talked to Congress, either whether asking for permission to do this, which seems to be what they have to do required by the Constitution, or even given the Gang of Eight a heads up at this point, which is something we haven't seen reported. What do you think that says about what Congress should be doing next?
Well, Congress was not adequately consulted before this operation, and we were not given an opportunity to make serious input into the process. Now there is the possibility of bringing the War Powers Act to the floor, which would give us an opportunity to vote on the action. Again, it just seems consistent with the president's dismissal of the law and the Constitution in so many different ways. And we're now in a situation where we have to get first a detailed briefing so that we can understand not only what happened, but the consequences of what is going on in the region. And then after that, we could make better judgments about any legislative path we take or what we do to try to limit the little fallout of this situation.
Senator Reed, we just showed a moment ago a clip of Vice President Vance on Meet the Press with Kristen Welker, where he said he has, quote, the president has, quote, clear authority to do what he did. What is that? What's he basing that on?
He's basing it on wishful thinking more than anything else, because the authority to wage war is vested by the Constitution in the United States Congress. This was not a example of the United States being directly attacked in which the president and the armed services have to respond immediately. This was a calculated decision by the president to use American military forces against another nation. And that is something that should be considered, I believe, an act of war and should have been at least consultation with Congress. So I don't think there's any legal basis to say this is just within the realm of anything the president can do. Not at all.
Senator Reed, have you talked to Republican colleagues in the Senate on what they believe should happen next? You have this war powers resolution coming from Tim Kaine. I assume he's making calls to get more folks. But have you heard from Republicans who have talked about wanting the president of the United States coming to Congress to ask for permission for things like this? Are they saying anything to you guys about what happens next, what they believe they're going to do next?
I haven't heard anything to this point, but I'm sure when we return tomorrow, there'll be conversations, extensive conversations about what happened, what's happening going forward. At this juncture, we have to be concerned, I think, about several things. First, retaliation. It would seem unlikely to me that the Iranians will simply accept the attack by the United States together with the attacks by Israel without some type of retaliation. It might take them days to pull that together. Then the second point, and it's ironic, but we have to get an assessment of the damage that was done at these sites. But regardless of the damage, this might accelerate their desire to get a nuclear weapon. As Tulsi Gabbard testified in March, the intelligence community thought that they were not intending to seek a nuclear weapon at this time. And then there's another possibility, too, which is they've been very supportive of the Russians in the war against the Ukrainians, and they're very supportive economically and otherwise to the Chinese. Do they start asking for or receiving assistance in nuclear technology, which could accelerate their process? So there are a lot of questions that we have to ask and get answers to before we are informed to help guide the policy of the United States.
Senator Reid, I want to follow up on something you mentioned in your previous answer to me on the question of the clear authority that the vice president said that the president had in doing what he did last night. The other thing he said in that interview was that the United States was, quote, not at war with Iran, but at war with Iran's nuclear capability. And I'm paraphrasing at least the last part.
Right.
Do you buy that? Because you said in your previous answer, excuse me, that this was an act of war.
Well, I mean, technically, when you attack a sovereign nation without any type of declaration, or even with a declaration, it's considered to be, I'm sure, by many across the world as an act of war. But, you know, to get into the fine legal and constitutional nuances, that I'll refer that to the courts. But the point, I think, is that's a distinction that the Iranians are not going to make. And I'm talking not just about the leadership of the country. I'm talking about the people of Iran. And there is a disconnect between the two. The Iranian populace is not as enthused as that much with their leadership. But now this could bring them together, because they see themselves under attack by both Israel and the United States. So, you know, the notion that, you know, this fine semantic distinction between attacking Iran and attacking the nuclear facilities, that's going to be lost on the Iranian people. And again, it could give the regime more strength and power, because people who otherwise are not enthusiastic about the regime could say, this is about our survival as a nation. So I think we have to be serious. This was call it what you want, but this was a serious use of military force against another nation, and they'll respond, I believe.
Senator, I wonder what signal you believe the president of the United States taking unilateral action on another country without coming to Congress, without talking to our allies, without saying anything to the United Nations Security Council, what signal that sends to someone like Vladimir Putin in Russia, who invaded Ukraine? What signal does that send to the leader of China, who there's always the concern about an invasion of Taiwan?
Mm-hmm. No, I think it gets the whole world community sort of on edge, because, again, it appeared that up until the Israeli attack, that the president was trying his utmost to defer such an attack while we continued our negotiations. It looks now as if we practically abandoned the negotiations. I don't think the Iranians will be in a context to listen to us or anyone else. And I think that the European community is not just the European community, the world community is getting more anxious. And one of the things that's far off, I don't think it's immediate, but, you know, there's talk now in Europe particularly of, well, can we rely upon the United States and NATO to protect us from a nuclear foe? Do we have to develop our own nuclear weapons? And this issue of proliferation, and the irony is, of course, you know, they would argue they're attacking Iran to prevent proliferation, but if the presumption of the world is that we have a power that's going to take us out, that could spur it.
Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island, thank you very much for joining us this morning on this big news day. Still ahead, we'll share some of our final thoughts on U.S. strikes on Iran when we come back.